let's get the conversation started. Dr. Obadiah Malafia, a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as a former presidential candidate, is joining me right here at the table. Dr. Malafia, good to see you. Happy Democracy Day. Good morning, sir.
Thank you so very much, Nancy. Great to see you, and trust you are doing great, and your baby too. We're fine. Wonderful and excellent.
Thank you very much,
Doctor.
Yes. All right, let's also, let me say good morning to Mr. Chuku. Mr. Chuku, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nancy, and good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
I can imagine, where are you? You're really in Lagos. I hope it's not a bit cloudy for the rains there. Mr. Chuku, let me start with you. Since you are in Lagos, talk to me about how Lagosians feel about the Democracy Day. What was the celebration like yesterday? Of course, that's the maiden June 12 Democracy Day, immortalizing Chief Moshood Kashimawo Abiola yesterday.
I think what happened yesterday is that there is a general feeling of excitement in the southwestern part of the country. You know, the Southwest has been agitating for recognition of June 12 as a landmark date in the history of the country for the sacrifice that late Chief Abiola had made. And the fact that the election of Chief Abiola is still considered as one of the fairest elections in history of this country. So for most people in the southwest of the country, particularly Lagos, they had a sense of fulfillment that eventually the country had recognized that June 12th is a landmark day in the history of this country.
All right. Let me come to Dr. Malafia. What did you take away from President's Democracy Day speech? Because on May 29, he was sworn in. A lot of critics came after President Buhari that at least he would have even spoken to Nigerians, even if in one word, thank you for voting for me. But we got to understand that he would make the speech on June 12th. Were you satisfied with what President Buhari told us yesterday?
Well, I think yesterday was much better. And definitely what happened on May 29th was very surprising and quite perplexing. Just taking the oath of office and then just simply walking away. And, you know, people needed to hear a word. At a time of confusion, people needed at least some hope from the president. But this time around, he didn't disappoint. And his speechwriters, I think, did a reasonably good job of it. In fact, compared to the first inauguration about being for everybody and for nobody, you know.
No, but that was one statement that really impressed a lot of people. I'm for everybody,
but for nobody.
Yes.
Yeah, not even Aisha. I mean, you have to be for somebody, for God's sake. So, you know, but this is much better. Definitely, Nancy, this was much better. He came up speaking like the statesman we expect him to be, rallying the nation and providing a vision of a better tomorrow, and also telling us what the government has done and is planning to do to take the economy forward. And the gesture of making turning the National Stadium into MK Abiola Stadium, I think is a very good step. And but we would have been more happy if he had taken the step further of actually acknowledging that MK Abiola won the elections that are, in fact, for protocol purposes, should be treated like a former head of state, and his running mate, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, should also be treated like a former vice president of the Federal Republic of this country. I know they've got all the titles,
yes, that's what
but it should be accompanied,
the GCFR.
Yes, and GCON, but that should be also accompanied by, you know, the change of protocol to accord them that privilege, so that we can bury at last the ghost of June 12. It is great for this country that the man who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the democracy that we enjoy today is being recognized in this way. So it's all good, and but I would have wanted to see more concrete action in terms of what he would do differently going forward in the next 4 years. What would we see differently from what we are seeing now?
Okay,
we wanted to have a sense of a new policy initiative that will relaunch the development of this country.
Mr. Chuku, you've heard what Doctor have said. He's, giving me an analysis of what he thinks. Tell me what you think, especially looking from the economic side of the president's speech, which I printed out, and going through it one by one. I think I have up to, let me check how many points now, up to 74 points. God bless us all, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria as the concluding part. What do you think? Did you take anything away from this, or is just same old coming from a politician's mouth?
Well, I think if you look at that, if you listen to that speech, there are a few what we may call strategic intent that the president announced. One of which is that the government intends to lift 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. That, for me, is a very key strategic intent that the president announced. He also talked about that they're going to improve on access to credit, infrastructural supplies to the rural small and independent enterprises. So as to improve their productive activity. They also mentioned the issue of clusters of SMEs in urban areas where the government will also provide some support. He did mention the aspects of additional investment in infrastructure, particularly power transmission infrastructure, to improve the power supply in the country. So some of these additions he made, but most critical statement he made is that the government will strive to lift 100 million people out of poverty. And I think that's the crux of the major strategic intent that was announced in his democratic speech.
Okay, Mr. Chuku, let me stick with you a bit since you've brought me there. Because even listening to the president yesterday and reading his speech, that is actually something that we should take home with. But not just taking home with, not just listening to the president, I'm going to lift up, or our intention is to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. When I heard that yesterday, I said, okay, fine, that's a strategic intent, just like you've said. But what is the strategy? What also came to my mind is the Chinese model. China has been able to lift 853 million people out of poverty in 30 years. Can we go the route of China? Can we take the Chinese formula? Is it going to work?
Well, it will work if we get the policies right. The devil is in the details. What the president made was a strategic intent. We need to now interrogate that strategic intent, and the government will have to present to us how it wants to achieve that objective. And that's, for me, what is still lacking. I hope that by the time the ministers are appointed, they will have a take on what plan of action the government wants to drive, how the government wants to drive the lifting of 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. It is not just China that has done it. China, like you rightly pointed out, lifted 850 million people out of poverty in 30 years. But India, interestingly, has lifted 230 million people out of poverty in just 7 years. Between 2011, Indian poverty population in 2011 was 306 million. As at the end of last year, it was only 70 million. So about 206 million people have lifted out of poverty in India in 7 years. So it's doable. But the key thing is that the current policy environment will not accomplish that objective. So the government needs to come up with a clear policy of that's a departure from what we have experienced in the past 4 years. For us to now subscribe to that overarching strategic intent of lifting 100 million people out of poverty. You mentioned the issue, the Chinese model. The Chinese model, the government of Nigeria may not implement it. We have to implement an economic model that fits our social structures. And I think that is where the challenge will come to the government. Do we have the right assemblage of economic leaders in the government economic management team that will come up with clear strategic plan on how to lift people, how to restructure the economy, how to grow private sector enterprises, how to create jobs, the president made a mention that the economy is going to grow about 2.7% in 2019. Population is growing at about 2.7%. So if the economy actually succeeds in growing at 2.7%, we're going to have a neutral improvement in income. So that will not lift anybody out of poverty. So the key challenge is, will the government have the right policy mix that will accomplish the strategic intent?
All right, Dr. Malafia, let me come to you. Let's stick with this poverty thing a bit, because everyone or most people have said that unemployment or poverty is just a ticking time bomb.
Sure.
I don't know if it has exploded yet. I think it's exploding. There's the pockets of it are exploding, and we're seeing the repercussions now, whether we like it or not, in insecurity that has taken different shades. The president saying that 100 million people will be lifted out of poverty in 10 years. And I calculated it on average. That means you're lifting 10 million people out of poverty every year. You saw what Mr. Chuku said, that with the current policy arrangement, we may not achieve that. What do you think about this?
Well, you know, we are so badly in need of hope that we are prepared to grab at any straw. I listened to the president very carefully. He did not say that he is committed to lifting 100 million people out of poverty. He actually said we can lift 100 million out of poverty. I think this is what I heard him say. And, but it still leaves me very vague, and I agree with my brother over there, that the devil is in the nitty-gritty of the detail. We are not yet clear how that strategy will be implemented. You know, one of the biggest success stories was that of President Lula in Brazil.
Brazil, yes.
And he lifted 20 million people out of poverty in 10 years. And that was seen as a great move. And India has done spectacularly well. And India practiced development planning since its independence in 1947 up till 49, up till today. And until recently, they decided to transform the Development Commission into what they call the National Institute for Transformation of India. And so, you know, they've done incredibly well, and India today has one of the fastest rates of growth in the world. So social intervention plus an accelerated growth strategy has enabled India to lift over 300 million people out of poverty. You see, you asked me whether it could explode. You know, scientists, physicists tell us that small bombs explode. But the biggest bombs, like the neutron bombs, they don't actually explode. They implode by sucking in everything into their zero gravity and exploding it, imploding it, and neutralizing everything at the molecular level. So we might face ourselves in danger of an implosion. That is, it may not be a big bang explosion, but we might see our social system, our moral values, our institutions simply decaying at the molecular level. And this is what we are seeing: cultism, nihilistic violence, you know, kidnapping, banditry, and it's getting worse.
Taking a different dimension.
Yes, and it's getting worse by the day. The rural areas today, and I'm a village boy, the rural areas today are almost no-go areas. Today, they're even worse and more dangerous than the cities. And that is terrible eventually for food security. And, you know, without food security, you know, you really can't have an economy to talk about in the long term. So really, the time bomb is ticking very, very fast. You would have expected, and I have respect for President Muhammadu Buhari as a person. But you see, you would have expected June 12 to be something that will spread euphoria all over the country. I can tell you, from the far north to the south, from east to the west, people are in mourning. Maybe you saw it, maybe I haven't. You go to the markets, you go to the streets, you observe people in the countryside, in the cities. There's an atmosphere of gloom all over the land. The young, in particular, are despondent. They feel that their future has been mortgaged. People are living in fear. You know, I'm told some of the Western states are now trying to hold a big summit to decide how they are going to take security into their own hands, and also how to regroup themselves into autonomous economic region, whatever that means. All the youths of Indigbo, whether we believe it or not, they are all Biafrans. They are just waiting for the day when they will have their own country. So everywhere we are seeing despair and despondency. We hope that this time around we shall have a true government of national unity, that Nigerians will not feel excluded from this government, but they will be embraced, and we shall feel that we have a people's government and there is no hidden agendas. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and that this president will be transparent and loving to all Nigerians equally, whether they voted for him or not. Okay. Once he's there, he is the father of the nation. Okay,
let me bring in Mr. Chuku at this point. Dr. Malafia has said a few things, implosion and explosion, talking about having that nationalistic sense, or the nationalistic sense coming from Mr. President. But if we're still probing the speech further, you alluded a bit earlier to it, because the president did say that the economy is expected to grow by 2.7% this year. And I wondered where or which formula made him get at that. But I said, anyway, he's the president. He may be privy to some...
Come again?
Okay. I'm just asking that at which formula did the president use to arrive at 2.7% GDP growth for the country, bearing in mind that even international organizations such as IMF, the World Bank, has even downgraded our growth forecast, 2.1% last year. The CBN, I don't think, is also feeling that optimistic about the economy. ERGP growth rate is also on one side. But I actually told myself yesterday, who am I? I'm just Nancy. Perhaps the president has more information than I do. 2.7% growth. Very optimistic. How are you going to get that?
I agree with you. The figure is optimistic. I wouldn't know where the president got his data from. It could be from Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, it could be from Central Bank of Nigeria, but most of the information data we have in the public space are posting growth rates of less than 2.7%. But like I also said, even if we grow at 2.7%, we are not going to lift anybody out of poverty. Your population is growing at 10 rate of 2.7%. Let me tell you one of the reasons why. Let me tell you one of the reasons why India lifted people out of poverty. Over 230 million people out of poverty in 7 years. Indian population has grown consistently at 5.6%. Indian economy, GDP growth has been about 5.6% in the past 10 years, on average. Their population is growing at 1.12%. So you see a positive growth trajectory in terms of per capita income. But Nigeria's population has been growing at 2.7 or thereabouts, and over the past 3 years or 4 years, we've seen a population, an economy that grew negative 1.58% in 2016, positive 0.82% in 2017, 1.9% in 2018, and we are projecting 7%. But of course, we know that's quite optimistic. So the challenge is that we have to find a formula that will grow this economy at a rate that's higher than the population growth rate. It's not enough. It shouldn't be a wishful thinking. It shouldn't be a matter of let's mount it. Like we mounted this economic recovery and growth plan. There was no clear strategy that will achieve the economic recovery and growth plan. And that's why we're going back to again to mount growth rate. It wouldn't give anybody any form of satisfaction if we just mount the growth rate that's coming out with a clear strategy on how to grow the economy.
Now, Mr. Chuku, just give me in a few terms what strategies that the government can come up with, especially, and let me put it this way, Naira-nized, no, not Naira-nized, yes, it could be Naira-nized or Nigerianized growth models that can actually lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. Dr. Malafia alluded that the president did not say we are committed. In fact, reading through his speech, the president says we can lift, which you actually said earlier on, that is a wishful thinking. But if we really want to help the president a bit, as those that are in this sector those that are looking at these numbers and perhaps offer some kind of Nigerianized solutions, what will that be?
Okay, I'll just give you a few tips. Let's start from infrastructure. Today, the government is trying to build infrastructure on budget allocation. It's not feasible because we don't have the revenue to support infrastructure development. Why don't we start from taking out the subsidy on petroleum products? I have figures of 11 trillion naira wasted on petroleum subsidy, which is not helping anybody in the country, and invest that amount in infrastructure development and quickly set up the build of infrastructure. Secondly, why don't we earmark some critical commercially viable infrastructure and bring in private capital and public-private partnership to build this infrastructure, given our limited revenue stream? Third, why don't we come up with, because once you take out the burden of government trying to build infrastructure, the government needs to borrow from the financial system will reduce and create room for the private sector to access credit at lower rates. Because we need to have private sector access credit at a lower cost, as well as to go into reproductive activity. Third factor, why don't we invest more in education and healthcare, primary healthcare? Because the president made a mention of the fact that our real wealth is in agriculture, mining, forestry, and livestock. For me, that is not appropriate. Whoever wrote that report made a fundamental error. Yeah. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, which is about artificial intelligence. What we call the extractive industry is the base, the first level of economic development. Most societies in the world have gone beyond the first level of economic development. You have gone through the first, second, third, and we are at the fourth industrial revolution. And somebody is talking about that our real wealth is in the extractive industry. No, our real wealth is in the human capital, which we are misplacing. Yeah. We need to appropriate educational system that will lift the knowledge base of our young people to the level they can compete globally. For me, those are among the few things that the government can concentrate on. Don't give fruit, remove the subsidy on petroleum products, build infrastructure, bring private capital to build infrastructure, bring down interest rate by stop reducing the crowd of the private sector if the government stop borrowing so much, and then support, look at the energy sector, particularly the logistics sector, and review the privatization scheme and bring in new investors in that sector so that we improve our supply, improve transport infrastructure, reduce the cost of borrowing, make credits available. That alone, those alone will lead to improvement in growth sector, in the growth of the economy.
Now, I like, Mr. Chuku, that you brought up that, you brought up that in the sense that the president says yesterday that the true wealth lies in agriculture, mining, and all of that. In fact, when I also read the speech, I was like, wow, okay, the president's speechwriters must have, done a bit better. I'm not criticizing them fully, but I'm saying that even at this time, just like you said, we're in the innovation age, the information age, artificial intelligence. I interviewed an ICT expert, the chief executive officer at Digital Africa 2 weeks ago or thereabout, and he did tell me, Nancy, that he's afraid that we're not even ready for AI. We are not afraid, we are not ready with what's happening in the ICT sector. But let's see what Dr. Malafia has to say about that. What do you think about the president saying that the wealth lies in agric and all of that? But he also did mention, also in his speech, that the true strength lies with the Nigerian people. But if you take a look at it, he also did mention that he was, he was a recipient of, I think, free education.
Free education.
Yes. The education we're seeing right now, the education we have, is it commensurate to the kind of education that we should have in the 21st century that should, model youth and children for the jobs of the future?
Yeah, that is very true. Again, the speechwriters for Mr. President were not altogether fair for him. He said, I was a product of free education in Daura, in Katsina, and so on. And then I was waiting to hear, therefore, I will do this for education. It was just a suspended statement that was not related to any policy initiative. So that was a bit disappointing for me. You cannot just say, oh, I'm a product of free education. So what are you going to do about it? So, I would have wanted him to say something more about education. As far as I'm concerned, that should be the #1 priority in this country. And I agree with my brother Chuku that, the biggest emphasis should be on human capital, on, retooling our people and equipping them with skills in a globally competitive economy. That's #1. #2, we have to fix the power issue. If I were Mr. President, I would declare a full-fledged state of emergency on power. The crisis is getting from bad to worse. He has all the powers. He has an opportunity to write his name in gold. If I were Mr. President, by one stroke of the pen, I would pass an executive order requiring that all public buildings must have solar panels on top of them. And these solar panels are not to be imported. We can bring in foreign partners, but they will be produced here in this country using our trained people in manufacturing of solar panels, in their installation, and in their maintenance. You can imagine what that will do for government buildings, for rural clinics, for rural schools, and so on and so forth. It might not be a total solution, but it will be a huge stopgap solution. And it's very clear to me that obviously the subsidies in the oil sector has created itself a vast opportunity for rent-seeking behavior and for massive corruption. I think it's time we did away with it. But if that 11 trillion that we claim we are spending on subsidies are available, government should come up front and declare how that money that is so saved could be redeployed into mass transit systems, into trams, into light rails in our major cities, Lagos, Ibadan, Kaduna, Kano, Port Harcourt, Newi, Enugu, the rest of it. We need those kind of systems in place, and we need massive investments in the power sector. We need to unbundle the downstream of the power sector. And we need to create a more vibrant and more hospitable business environment, and also ensure food security.
Okay.
And also, before I forget this, build a truly democratic ethos. Like this hounding and persecution of media by MBC through my friend Modibo Kau, I'm so disappointed. He's a socialist, brilliant intellectual, but he's behaving like somebody from Stalin's Russia. I know we never discussed this with you, but it is a serious danger for our democracy, and I hope you have the good sense to stop this nonsense and persecution of media. It's very bad for our country. It's bad for democracy.
Okay, Mr. Chuku, let me bring you in here. The president did also say in his speech that he acknowledged that it takes too long for goods to leave our seaports, that roads leading to them are congested. I remember during the campaign seasons, in fact, the Apapa gridlock disappeared under 1 second. And I was saying, what exactly is wrong with us as a country? The president left Lagos, immediately the trucks were back on. Let me bring in the Chinese model here again. Since one of the highlights of the president's speech yesterday was that he's going to we can lift, that's what the president said, we can lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. And I also want to remind Mr. President and those that are managing the economy, we're still waiting for the ministers, that China in the last 30 years or so has the policy of productivity from low-end toys. Most toys you see here in Nigeria are produced in China, to high-end electronics. They are all produced in China. So China has that productive capacity. Are we ready to take that pathway?
Well, interestingly, the president, like I said in my opening speech, that some of them were strategic intent. Take, for instance, the first part of your question, which is the issue of time it takes, the number of agencies at the seaports, and the length of time it takes to clear goods at the seaports. I mean, that is, with a stroke of the pen, the president can address that. So it beggars attention that, it beggars logic that the president can identify such bottleneck and not address it. The simple is that in the past, we've come up with a situation where which there should be a one-stop clearing point at the seaport, where the customs, the immigration has no business with the seaport. Some of the agencies there have no business with the seaport. So what are they doing at the seaport? When you have multiple agents of government that a clearing agent has to go through several points, this point not only serve as toll gate for extortion of money from these importers, also serve as delay points, bottlenecks to clearing of goods. And let me tell you, the concept of queue is that when the rate of service or discharge is lower than the rate of arrival, you're going to have a queue. The problems we have in Ababa is partly because the time it takes people to carry their goods and bring them out of the wharf is longer than the time it gives the vehicles to come to the wharf. And that's the challenge that can be addressed with a stroke of pen. So for me, that should not be beggars logic that we have not addressed that. The issue of infrastructure in Ababa is actually an eyesore. There's no logical reason why a country, no matter how poor that country is, we contend with vehicles staying on the highways for two good weeks, and we cannot address that problem in 4 years. It doesn't happen in other place. So these are things that are low-hanging fruit that the president can give executive orders like he did, and instructing him to make sure they clear the Apapa corridor. Yes. So the same executive order can be issued to ensure that we'll harmonize the clearing of goods at the seaport. We can also deepen our logistic facility in terms of reception of goods coming into the country by dredging or deepening the channels that leads to Calabar, Warri, and Port Harcourt. There's no reason why 99% of the goods coming to the country is coming to Lagos when we can build this seaport. The challenge we have here, we're not building infrastructure, and we think that we will suddenly wake up and find our economy has developed. It will not happen. Development is never an accident. It has to be a dint of consistent effort, well-planned, concerted effort that will bring about development. And we seem to be head on the stand, hoping that we wake up and things will just improve.
Thank you, Mr. Chuku, for that. Yes, very quickly, I want to bring in Doctor. Doctor, you just have less than, 1 minute.
Okay, I just wanted to say on this point of Lagos, people know I'm an Awoist, and I love Yoruba culture and everything. But let's just be very honest. And there's a lot of politicking about the whole topic. Lagos has reached its extreme limits in terms of population. You turn everywhere is water. You turn everywhere is water. There's no more land in Lagos. So all this thing about concentrating things in Lagos doesn't make scientific sense. We need, like my brother here, as Chuku said, we need other deep sea ports. Calabar deep sea port, Port Harcourt, and others. We need to even build 10 more and de-emphasize this Lagos thing. Lagos, I've seen those trucks. They are total nightmares. And physically, there's no place to expand in Lagos. Therefore, it is now, while we're trying to solve that problem, we should now, in terms of urban planning and port development, look at other deep sea ports. Why should somebody have to carry all his goods from Apapa to Newi when Port Harcourt is just next door? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
It adds to the cost, and it's a logistical nightmare, and it is an serious infrastructure bottleneck. So we can do better, but let's take sentiments and politics out of it.
I don't want to deal with sentiment, neither do I want to deal with politics on the show. It's just based on facts and figures.
Sure.
You know, Mr. Chuku, I don't know. I'm just being drawn to say I would like to have you both again because we've not finished analyzing this president's speech, 74 points, apart from other political stuff there, but a whole lot of it also centered on the economic prospects, I'll put it like that, for the country. Some achievements also that the president did say, the 2 million Anchor Boras scheme jobs, school feeding program and all of that. I would like us to interrogate it more, but I would say perhaps after the show, I'm going to discuss with you both and see if we can do this again. Mr. Chuku, is that an aye from you? I'm not a legislator, but can I say aye to that?
Yeah, aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Malafia?
The eyes have it.
Okay, so Bram, the eyes have it. So we will discuss that. Many thanks, Mr. Chuku, for joining us today on the show. I wish you a lovely day in Lagos. I hope it's not cloudy. I'm wondering where you are. You are out there, definitely, in Lagos.
Yes, I'm at the Westwood Hotel in Ikoyi. I mean, let me give them credit for that. And this is their beach side, and it's a wonderful sight to behold.
Don't tell me you're having a meeting and you sneaked out from the meeting to speak with me.
Surely. I'm actually attending a conference here, so I have to sneak out to come and talk to you.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much for that respect. Thank you. All right, I will speak with you again. So have a lovely day in Lagos.
Yeah.
Dr.
Well done, Nancy.
Let's see if we'll do that
Sure.
again
Okay.
soon. Perhaps as soon as tomorrow.